idea for all this really came from a dream?
Yes, it did.
Good evening and welcome to Nox Mente. Tonight's guest is Jason Quitt. Jason Quitt is a graduate of the Institute of Energy Wellness and a student of Algonquin Shamanism. He's been training and working with many teachers, shamans, and traditional healers from around the world. Jason is also the author and teacher of Egyptian Postures of Power and the Yosef Codes, Methods of Personal Healing and Practice. As a channeler of universal and dimensional energies of healing, he combines these methods and modalities of energy, medicine, shamanism, and dowsing to assist those in their own personal paths of healing and enlightenment. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, and it's really good to be here with you.
Our pleasure.
Yeah, it's such an honor. And anyone that knows how I am, I have wanted you on the show from the beginning. Everyone that connects us, I'm like, tell Jason I want him on the show. Like BB, when you were contacting the desert, I'm getting every back line to you to get you on here. Your story resonated with me so deeply when I first heard it a few years ago that I'm glad to have this connection. And this is an extra special night. I just have to start out with this because Jerry was in the ether.
Literally. I also wanted to say thank you to everyone who reached out to me while I was in the hospital. So many people did. I didn't get back to them because I was, fucked up in the hospital. But thank you to everyone who sent good vibes and whatnot. I appreciate it a lot.
Yeah, this was, I went on a Twitter campaign and actually signed into the Nox Mente account, which I never have done.
I saw that.
I know. And so I also want to personally thank everyone for all the juju, all the prayers, everything that came down the pipe. It made a difference clearly. And here we are.
Yeah, I'm not
We're
fucking
rocking.
dead.
Right? It's not just Jason and I on the show tonight.
Yeah, exactly. And Grimsteak. How dare you? How dare you?
We were going to go on. There was no way I was missing Jason Quitt on the show.
Neither was I. That's why I was like, please rebook him.
Yeah. Yeah. So here we are, Jason. Thank you. And I think we should let's just roll right into it.
Sure.
So take us way back to you in this lifetime, to your earliest memories within this lifetime, in this time frame of stuff that kind of built the structure that you now stand in. So pop culture, relationship with nature, all the kind of big stuff as far back as you can recall.
Sure. All right. So I would say that I was a child who lived in a haunted house. I'll just get that right out of the way. It was, I had a lot of paranormal things going on where I grew up as a small child. And I also had these memories, I'll say, coming into this life, these pre-birth memories that were extremely strong. And I would tell my mother constantly when I was very young that I had these memories. And, even if you spoke to her today, she would tell you that I used to go around and telling her, aren't you happy that I chose you to be my mother? And it was because I had this memory of being in a different place before I was born. And the only way I could describe this place was very much a vision of the 80s, because that's the time frame that I was born into. And it reminded me of almost like being in a 1980s airport. And I was there with other children. We were all babies, you would say, crawling down these hallways. And there was what looked like these stewardess, just like an 80s stewardess. And the stewardess says to me, it's now time for you to choose your parents. And they guided me down this hallway. There was this small little door. And they opened the door. I went through this doorway. And it was almost like going into a movie theater that was empty. So it was a huge room, completely dark. And in front of me, the only way I could describe it is like a portal would open up, and it was like a portal of light in this dark room, like a movie projector just went on, and it was it was like I could see my future parents in different times of their lives. It was almost like a viewing screen through this portal, and I would sit there watching different moments of my parents' life, and honestly, I was so overwhelmed with happiness. I was so excited to be born to these people, so that when I finally had the knowledge of speaking English, when I don't know how old I was, but the first things I would start to say to my mother is, "Aren't you happy that I chose you to be my parents?" Basically, and they really thought that it was a cute thing that a child would say, but for me, it was coming from that very strong memory. And I tell people about this, like, I don't remember what I ate for lunch yesterday. I don't remember those details, but for some reason this memory has been like burnt into my subconscious my entire life, like it has some type of importance to it. So it started off there, and then as I started to grow up in this house which had this kind of paranormal activity to it, um, I started to have these past life events starting to happen to me, and they were extremely frightening because I was also extremely young at this time. Um, I would say the first one that really kind of stuck with me, and I could still remember it to this day. Basically, um, it's like I started to hear. It started off with like audio. It's the best way I could say this. I started to hear two people like fighting. That's all I could say. It's just like I started to hear two people fighting, and suddenly I was taken into this scene, and I was watching these two men fighting each other, and it was extremely brutal. Not the things you see in film. It was way beyond that. It was literally disgusting. They were basically fighting to the death, and I was I don't even know how, probably like 3, 4 years old. Like this was very young, just when I started to walk, and it scared me so much that I snapped out of it and ran, obviously, to the parents' room to try to describe what was happening to me. And I started to have these moments through life where I'd be taking on these kind of journeys where I'm taken to this scene, and it's usually a very traumatic scene. It's usually end of life. So I would say most of my past life memories that I have, they're literally like right at the end of that last person's life for some reason. I don't know why. There was also things in my house, as in I would hear voices as a child, and just very, very strange things. For example, we had a TV in the basement of our house, and my mother would always yell at me, "Jason, you left the TV on. Turn that TV off. Go downstairs right now." And I was never downstairs to begin with, so I never turned the TV on. And I could hear it. It was a loud TV. So as I'm running downstairs to turn this off, the TV is, by the time I get to the room, the TV is completely off. It always freaked me out. And I would always hear these kind of voices. It was almost like there was conversations in the house. I could hear conversations in my house, and they were always kind of originating from the basement. And sometimes these conversations were really loud. So I would follow the voices down into the basement. And by the time I get to the basement, there's no more voices. They just kind of disappear. So this is kind of my very early childhood. So when I would kind of tell my parents this, that I was having these dreams, they would just say they're nightmares, right? And I thought, okay, this is what a nightmare is. But there was one thing that would happen that has stuck with me always. You know how children want to keep the closet door closed at night? There's something under their bed, there's something in their closet. They have this fear, right? Well, for me, it's like when I went to sleep, my closet door was facing right in front of me, right in front of my bed. And at nighttime, I had to get out of bed and make sure that that door was freaking closed. Like, that's the only way I could go to sleep. And in the middle of the night, I'll feel something, I'll feel this energy, and the door of my closet will open by itself. Okay, it's how scared are you as a child when that happens? And, when I get the courage to kind of peek my eyes from under the covers to see the door opening from the closet, there would be a figure standing in the door of that closet. And it just looked like a humanoid shadow is what it looked like, just a standing shadow. And there was one night where I was really trying to examine it really good. And the only way I could describe it is like a dehydrated person or like a scarecrow. The only way I could describe it. And this thing, whatever it was, would take me out of my body. I thought I was dreaming. All right. I didn't know anything about out of body travel or astral anything. For me, I just thought it was dreaming, but this thing would kind of wake me up in the dream and take me on these kind of journeys. And they would take me down into the basement and they would show me like a coffin in my basement, and they would open the coffin and there would be like this person in there, but they would be wrapped in linen, so I couldn't really see um, any details of this person. And in my child's mind, the only thing I could think of was this person died here and they're showing me themselves dead. They're trying to tell me that they're dead because there was no communication with this thing. And another really strange thing is that when I was in these out of body states or these dream states with this shadow thing, when I would look out the window from my bedroom, there's a park behind my bedroom. And I'd go play there all the time. But when I would look out the window when I was in this state, there was no park. It was like a cornfield. So even in my mind as a child, I was looking out into this field and I was thinking, this is before this house was built. So there's something that was going on in this out of body state where there wasn't really this thing called time. It was like you can view things as they were back then. You weren't in the time period that you were now.
The linearity of the time is gone.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then as I grew up, I was in one school and then I was taken out at 11 years old to go into a public school. And I didn't really have any friends. I didn't really know anybody in this new school. And there was one person that we became basically like instant friends. Like I became very connected to this person almost right away. And I had this past life memory of me and this person come back to me as an 11-year-old child. And it was so detailed. It was like the most detailed past life experience I've ever had. It's like I saw the end of our lives. I saw the reasons why we died. It was like all explained to me. It was so profound. And when I realized that this person, this child, was this other person in this life with me, I was so filled with joy that finally, like, we're back in a life together. I remember running up to this person and I said, "Don't you remember who we were?" I was trying to get this person to remember us in a past life. And I said, "Come on, man, I killed you. Don't you remember?" You know?
This is the shadow person?
No, this was a child that was in school with me that we became friends with. And
oh, that's cool.
And I realized on that day that maybe I saw the world a little different from most people because they kind of looked at me very strange. And
shocking.
And I didn't really I think after that 11-year-old moment, all those things went away. It was like all the abilities just kind of shut down and I became the normal child, right? And, I wanted to be popular. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to go out. And I did. Um, Probably got away with a lot of stuff growing up too. But
Do you think that shutting that stuff down helped in your social development?
absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because it was almost like shocking in a way that I, I kind of knew in the back of my head that maybe the person wouldn't believe me,
Mm.
but he actually did believe me over time because, we're still best friends till this day. It's absolutely amazing that people that you have strong past lives with, I'm still connected to this person. And in fact, later on in life, when I was 21 years old, me and this person opened up a recording studio together and we started a business together. So we had this very strong connection that I would say goes back many lives. But nothing happened, literally. No psychic, spiritual dreams, nothing happened from after that moment when I was 11 years old to about 22. And this is when this whole thing started to really awaken to me or started happening to me. And because I was at an older age, I literally couldn't stop it and I couldn't ignore it. It was right in my face and I couldn't do anything about it.
This is remarkable. The two master numbers, too, 11 and 22. I'm wondering, I've got to tell you that my best friend was the same, who's just passed a couple months ago. Uh, Same story. I ran up, but he recognized me also. So we had this mutual recognition. And on that, so with these past, so back where we were when you're young, and these visions you were shown through dream, however you were accessing this information, do you think it's possible that those were, as they say, you? So the fighting bloody men, the others, so all the other stories that you were tapping into, all the other storylines, do you think they were aspects of you or lives you had been, instead of just the witness, third person, these death scenes, were they you?
Well, that's the thing is that I did not know. I just thought I was viewing something that was terrifying and a nightmare. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know at all that these were me in a past life. But as I started to have past life rememberings, past 22 years old, that's when it really hit me that now I understood that what I was viewing was actually an other me
Yes.
dying. And that was a huge, I'd say, enlightening moment. And it- how do I say this? It's like when you go through those scenes, it is you. Like you feel every emotion that that person feels. You feel exactly what's going on in that person's mind. It's almost like you're shadowing that person's consciousness. And it's so real and so vivid and it affects you. I think this is the biggest thing. It affects you. So it's like the moment I wake up from these past life rememberings, I'm a different person. I can't go back to the way I was because it's almost like you go through a trauma again and you can't, it's not like a dream where it just, you forget it at the next moment. These visions basically haunt you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. I also have another question about the closet. Do you think, and now from where you are now, Jason, do you think that was serving as a portal?
Yes, yes. And in fact, ancient mysticism, they always talk about to create a doorway. Just a doorway in general is a portal to another world. And that I completely agree that for that being to come visit me, and it's a shadow, it doesn't look good. I think it's another aspect of myself.
I was
That's
just
what
going
I
to ask
really
you that
think.
question.
I do not think that that was some spirit entity of another person haunting me at all. I think that that was literally an aspect of my soul,
Spirit guide.
spirit, whatever it was. And the interesting thing about these guides, you know, a lot of people could call them shadows or whatever, but they do not speak. I've never had these things speak to me ever. What they do is they show, is they take you and they show. And I'll just say, if you've ever watched Peter Pan, you know the story with Peter Pan where his
Sure,
shadow
his
is running
shadow.
around and he can't catch his shadow, and his shadow takes him to Neverland? It's like that's the same kind of archetype.
There's no
as
parks in
basic-
Never.
Yeah,
In the backyard, rather. Never mind. Sorry.
right. So, and I came face to face with this same, as what I believe is the same type of shadow thing again when I was 22 years old. And yeah,
So that same one, which is an aspect of yourself, I can't get this image out of my head, by the way, that you travel, moving through the ether and accessing what, you know, we call timelines and all this, that this is you traveling. And possibly, you know, when you encounter yourself, which is, you know, where they say this is kind of a paradox in a way, but this is a form of recognition of you viewing yourself, and it displays in this way. And so at 22, what brings you, so I do want to step back and get back to younger you, but I'm going to jump around here. So
Sure.
at 22, what brings you back online, and in particular with the shadow you that's traveling, was that part of the process?
yes, yes, it seems like the awakening process. You know, we call it an awakening process. I don't know what kind of process it actually is, because you know you're the same person. You just have these other type of experiences in your life.
Why can't it just be evolutionary?
Yeah, it's
Growth, whatever you want to call it.
yeah. I think it completely changed me as a person. But I know you guys see me on Twitter. Twitter is literally my real personality. Just
And you are funny. This is
thank
for
you.
sure. Anyone that follows you on Twitter knows this, and I'm sure
Thank
all the people in life.
Well, so I would say that these experiences, it doesn't change your personality. It doesn't even change your identity, really. What it does is it makes you kind of see the world in a different way. I think that's the best description of it. But when I was 22, and you know, I tell these stories all the time. It started with sleep paralysis. That's how it started up again. And with me, it was like extreme sleep paralysis, which is like it happened almost every night. There was like a time in my life, in when I was 22 years old, where I would go to sleep and I would wake up frozen. And I'd be screaming in my mind to wake up, and I just couldn't. Um, I got so used to these situations because they were happening so frequently. It's like I can feel before I would enter these states. And then I started to feel that there was like a being or some type of energy that would walk into my bedroom. And as this energy walked into my bedroom, I could feel my body like shutting down into sleep paralysis mode. And you have to remember, okay, I grew up in a Jewish household, but it was non religious. We didn't study anything, we don't really know anything. So I really had no kind of spiritual or religious background whatsoever. So when this happened to me, your mind goes to what the media tells you it is, right? So I automatically thought that this was alien abduction or it was a demon possession. That's the only two options I thought this was, right? So I was very, very fearful. And when you are fearful, you become religious very, very quickly. So I was
Yes.
basically praying to every deity I could possibly think of to help me get out of this situation, right? But one night I just couldn't take it. And it's literally, it's like you get to a breaking point where it's like, this is too much. I got to stop this from happening to me. So, oh, and I'll just back up a little. There is something very strange about being in this sleep paralysis state, because the body literally becomes your sarcophagus. All right.
Yes.
It's a
Yes.
shell. It's a shell. And in this state, you have this other body inside of you that you could move. This is the biggest mind-blowing thing that it's like, how am I? It's like I'm moving inside my own body. It didn't make any sense to me. So I'm moving in my body and I'm shaking myself, trying to wake up, like I'm pounding on the top of a coffin, basically. And I got so fed up that I shook my body so hard within myself that I popped myself out. And it was exactly what people describe as a near-death experience. And I found myself above my bed. I could see myself in the bed. And I was laying flat on my back, and the scariest thing of all was my eyes were wide opened, right? And, you know, a lot of people say, well, are you hallucinating? Is this a dream? Is it a nightmare? You don't know how sober you become. It's like you get smacked with reality. Like, this is not a dream. I'm dead. I'm above my body. This is like hyper realistic. It's hyper realistic. And what shocked me the most was that there was a being standing at the foot of my bed. And this is the being I could feel walking into the room. And it looked like a gigantic shadow person, exactly like what we would describe as the Grim Reaper. It didn't have that thing in his hands, whatever you call that thing.
Scythe.
Scythe, yeah.
Scythe.
They never had that. It was just, it looked like a very big shadow that had form and mass, but you couldn't see any details. And in that moment, it was almost like a confirmation that I had just killed myself. So that's how real it was. It was like I had to deal with the fact that I'm dead now, and there's my body, and there's the Reaper to take me away. And it just shocked me so much that I got sucked back in my body, and I woke up in bed. Obviously, my heart is pounding out of my chest. I'm sweating like, holy
Yes.
shit. Like, that is not a dream.
So what do you think that state is that you were in, where you're looking back at your body? I mean,
from my perspective now, I believe that is what people have referred to as the astral state.
Okay. So there's no astral plane beyond that as far as you're concerned. You were there on that plane.
This is the weird thing, because obviously I read like the different material, like New Age material and metaphysical material.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people that talk about, you know, fourth and fifth and sixth dimension.
Yeah.
None of that is what I experienced. None of that is what I experienced. Because for me, it was like, once you're in that astral state, and I don't know what else to call it. It could be something completely different, but for me to describe it, I'll call it the astral state. Once you're in that state, it's like a jumping off point. You can go to different timelines, you can go to different dimensions. There's portals. You get pulled through different portals to different places.
It's like a space between.
Yeah, it's like a space between. It's almost like a dream world.
Yeah.
But it has different laws.
And time works differently there.
Yeah, I would say that it's like it completely cuts time out unless you jump into some other timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So
Which
it's
just
this
tells
in
me that
between.
time is an illusion
Oh yeah.
to us
And,
here. Yeah.
The way that I could think of time, and trust me, I've been thinking about this for so many freaking years, and it doesn't even make sense to me yet, but it's almost like time is a record. I mean, like an LP musical record with these like little lines on it. And it's in like your consciousness is that needle running across that line. And sometimes that line can skip and you can jump to different timelines. And I'm always trying to figure out, and this is just me being curious, is as if we do incarnate here and live lives and make choices, do we change the timeline and it makes ripples out throughout all these timelines? And can we, from this out of body state or this other dimensional state, look down at all these timelines to see how all time evolves itself? Sorry, it's Christmas and I've been deep thinking.
It's cool. No, it's an interesting concept. There's I don't recall the name of it, but there's a Hindu idea that you can get to a state where you can view your entire timeline. It's like the snake body. You're a snake. If you look at yourself plotted across all of time, it's like a giant snake.
Wow. And in ancient times, the snake was actually the symbol of knowledge.
Yes.
Yes.
So
all the Naga stuff in the Hindu religion.
I've always thought of time as a tape. In fact, I put that in my video, Shades of Samhain, passing by as in bye-bye. It always made sense to me since I came in aware that it was a tape and we could access, just like you said, you could move. I like the idea of it as a record. I hadn't actually, and it's funny because they're so similar.
Yeah.
but yet there is kind of a different context. I want to just get a little bit in the background, some of the foundation again before we spring forward, if that's all right.
Of course.
So pre-11, your self-11, before the shutting down of your psychic senses, so to speak, which were there, but just ignoring them. What were the things that you liked to watch on TV, say, and do in your mundane life?
I loved comedy. I grew up on Kids in the Hall, In Living Color, old SNL.
I'm crushing your head.
Yeah. Well, I'm also Canadian too, so I understood Kids in the Hall.
Yeah. My favorite was Hecubus, by the way.
Oh yes. Evil. So I grew up watching that. Obviously, I grew up also watching Star Trek, The Next Generation, and X-Files. I mean, that's like the most popular shows of the time when I grew up. So I was like aware of all these kind of ideas in the media as well. And I was really sucked into it because, I mean, I think I really got into sci-fi too. I think I've seen every Stargate episodes. And I think this is why I'm very cynical of all the new stuff coming out from whistleblowers, because I'm like, that was in Stargate like 20 years ago, buddy.
Yes.
So yeah, I grew up watching all those things. And also I had this very deep love for music. So much so I was obsessed. I was obsessed with guitars. Still kind of a little obsessed with guitars.
I see them in the background.
Yeah.
I should say too, your light came on a few times. Your outdoor light.
Oh, that's just, yeah, I'm in the bunker or the basement, so my wife is probably checking in.
I was checking to make sure it wasn't a shadow person.
No. But I'll tell you a really awesome story from my childhood. I always wanted an electric guitar. Always wanted an electric guitar. And, when I've had a vision of what the coolest electric guitar was as a child, it was always a Fender Stratocaster with the sunburst, the mahogany wood. That for me, that's what a guitar is growing up. And I would always beg my parents for a guitar, and obviously they would not want the noise in their house, and they just said no flat out, right? And I was in a music store with my father, and he says, "Oh, they're having a raffle. Why don't you just put your name in the box?" And he wasn't expecting anything from that. But like a couple months later, the music store called me up, and I won that guitar. I got a Fender Stratocaster, exactly the one that I wanted. And that made my parents very upset, obviously.
Ooh, manifestation, Jason. That's good.
Yeah. So for me, music was always a part of my life. I grew up making music. I was one of I was programming music on DOS. I don't know if you remember DOS,
Of course.
but I had Impulse Tracker on DOS with samples. I was like 10, 11 years old, like producing music for my friends. And growing up, I was in a band. So many people don't know this about me, but from the beginning of the high school to the end of high school, I was in a heavy metal band. I was a guitarist for a heavy metal band. We played almost every venue in Toronto more than once.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Did your lead singer have a pet mouse named Jet?
No, but a
'Cause
lot of them did.
You're almost paralleling my life right now.
And then I got into programming and engineering of music with synthesizers and sequencers and computers and things. And then I switched bands from a heavy metal band to a band that was very similar to Depeche Mode.
Oh my God, I love it.
Yeah. So then I played with them.
Synthwave.
Yeah, yeah. So I was in a synth pop, synthwave band, and I was 16 years old, and the people in my band were 24. So I wasn't allowed to go to the clubs to play because I was only 16 years old. But the lead singer of the band kind of looked like me a little, and he gave me his old ID. So when I was 16 years old, I pretended I was 24 years old so I could play all the clubs in Toronto. So by the time my friends caught up to me and they could finally go to clubs when they were 21, I was like, why would you want to go to a club? That's so terrible. Like I've already been to hundreds by that time. So I got that out of my system at a very early age.
That's great. Yeah, I had the fake ID going early too. See, this is the stuff why I like the background stuff that people that listen to possibly, all the woo woo. This is stuff that's important in your bio that allows us to connect into you as a person. So that's fantastic. And I'll live synthwave. I'm having a revival of synthwave right now.
I'm still making it. Yeah, I know most people can't see me, but I'm in the studio right now, and in front of me is a bunch of synthesizers and drum machines and sequencers.
I'm living for that. That's the kind of music I put out. I'm loving it. And what's so great is there's actually a real revival happening right now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and there's some days where I don't have work, and I will just sit here all day and just play anything I want, and it's fantastic.
So I have a question regarding artistic stuff, and of course music falls under this. Music's one of the easiest things I think to get in the groove. When you're in the groove of, say, when the muse steps in, how does that work for you with the you that everyone knows? Do you get downloads, or how are you tapped into something that's not you and that's moving through you?
It's a great question, and the best way to answer it is also through music. If I sit down and say I'm going to make a song, nothing will come out. And if it does come out, it's garbage. So what I do is I just completely zone out, is the best way to describe it. maybe put yourself in a meditative state. You just completely zone out. And I would say that it's all about feeling and emotion. So at first, I'll get on the synthesizers. I'm kind of a nerd for analog synthesizers, and I have one of my favorite synths of all times. Uh, Actually, on both my sides, I have the Moog Voyager,
Yes.
which I love.
Yes.
I've
And
always
then on the
wanted a
right
Moog.
side, I have a Dave Smith and Oberheim OB6.
Oh, dude.
So I have a polyphonic. Um, I also actually, it's funny because the Moog, um, I actually became friends with the person who engineered the Voyager synthesizer. He was the head engineer at Moog Music and worked side by side with Bob Moog. And so I became, another one of these amazing synchronicities in life. I became close friends with that guy before I even owned a Moog. And I kept saying, like, man, I'm poor. One day, I wish I could afford the instrument that you built. And I finally got that done. And it took 37 years of my life to do it.
And now they cost a fortune.
Yeah, they don't make it anymore.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, and they're really sought after.
yeah. But to get back to the whole muse thing, is that what I'll do is I'll get on one of these synthesizers and I'll kind of fine tune a sound. And like once I hit that sound where it's like, okay, this is a really good sound, suddenly the sound takes me on how it wants to kind of represent itself. If that makes sense. It's almost like I go with whatever that sound takes me to. And that's how I kind of channel that information through music.
Yeah, I 100% get that, but I'm in the music flow as well, and it is not me. It comes through, and if you just let go to it, it takes you. You can transcend. There's a transcendence that happens, and then at the end of it, you have something that is really quite magical.
Yeah. And like I said with guitars, I would like sit in bed with a guitar and I'm not thinking of anything. I'm just kind of playing whatever I'm playing, not even thinking about it. And that's when you'll come up with the most amazing things. You're like, wow, that actually sounds good. And then you'll start working on that.
In your journeys, so I'm following this thread right now. So in your journeys out of body and moving through timelines and all this, is there a musical element that's going on?
Never. The only musical thing that's ever happened to me in a dream or in these outer body experiences, um, it's a very strange story because I'm with someone that people would refer to as Toth. So I'm being guided by this being named Toth, and he didn't. For me,
That's
he
me.
didn't look. He didn't look like any type of god. To me, he kind of looked like an old monk, and he was bald. And he was short, and for me, that is Toth. You know. But so one day he, in some type of journey, he took me to this kind of. It was almost like this store that had these scrolls, and it was on the bottom shelf. And he picked up this thing. It was like this metal scroll. Or I thought it was a scroll. It wasn't a scroll. It was this metal cylinder. And we walked outside. And he told me to open it, and I opened this thing, and this sound came out of it. And the sound was like, it sounded like a million people singing at once or toning at once. It was like a million people toning at once. And that sound was so powerful that it like, I felt it through every cell of my body. And it actually shook me back awake. So I woke up in my bed, still kind of like dealing with that sound. And it was extremely emotional. Like I couldn't stop crying after I heard that sound. But the only way I could describe it is it was like a million or 1,000, I don't know how many. It was just a lot of voices toning in different frequencies, and that was the only musical element of my journeys that I've experienced.
That sounds incredible. So okay, so with music, but in your okay, so now on this thread, in the journeys, and this includes the holistic idea of journeying, so the out of body, but also mundane dreaming, and the full picture, sound in general. So not necessarily music, but just sound. How does that play for you?
Well, in my belief, um, music itself um, does something to you. For me, I believe that music is one of the keys of awakening, one of the keys of spiritual experience and journeying. I think to be musical or to enjoy music or to sing or to dance, um, it does something with the brain. It kind of opens these channels up that might not be opened in other ways.
It's almost a key, musical key that unlocks a certain state of consciousness. I totally understand that, because there's something when you play in a live music with a band. There's a change that you go through, as you probably well know. It's just it's an amazing thing. Yeah, sorry.
And if you've ever played live before, it's like right before you get on stage, like you're shaking in your boots, you're so nervous. And then when you get up there and you start playing that first song, it's like you get hit with this energy, and it's better than any drug there is.
Totally.
And you do not want to get off that stage. Even when you play that last song, you want to stay up there.
Like full body goosebumps.
Yeah, it's an amazing experience. So you get addicted to it. You get addicted to that feeling.
Yeah, it's definitely a high, the best kind. so say, like, back in the so when you're speaking or hearing audibles, like speech or ambient stuff, for example, vehicles, uh just wind moving through a dreamscape, wind moving through the astral ethers. Is there anything different about that in those states as opposed to how you experience this sensation, this sense here?
Yes, and sound, and I think it's listening. The word is listening. Listening is extremely important, and a very powerful meditative tool is listening, the act of listening. So, for example, I would go outside at night. This is like in my early 20s when I just started kind of meditating and getting into all this. Go outside, close my eyes, and I would just listen. So that was my meditation, is listening. And I found that your ears are like, you could tune into things and you could tune out of things. And if by listening to sounds like the rain falling or the wind blowing through leaves of trees or a bird in the distance or just something, you could focus your listening to just that one thing. And it's almost like an out of body experience. That, you expand your world out of body to really connect through sound of the nature around you. And you get very good at this, or you can get very good at this. It's like I was listening to, let's say, rain drops. It was raining out. And you tune in to that, almost like one drop of rain falling in front of you. And if you hold that moment through sound, it's almost like you can slow that motion of that raindrop coming down from the sky. It's an amazing thing. But it's through practicing of listening and expanding through just the sense of sound.
You just brought up memory of an old song, which I put in chat of. It's an old Talking Head song called "Listening Wind."
Oh,
Because there's about wind, and you said listening. I'm like, oh, have you ever heard that song?
I haven't. I have.
It's
I'm
creepy.
gonna have to check it out later.
Yeah. Peter Gabriel did a cover of it. Yeah, it's an interesting song.
Very nice. Very nice. So I believe that sound does play a part in opening different senses up. Absolutely. And sound could also be triggers for memories, just like smell. Our one of our greatest senses is smell. And if you want to go back to past traumas to heal, or if you want to remember certain things, smell will almost instantly take you right back to that memory.
Yeah, I've always found scent and smell to be the most powerful for taking me back to a certain pinpoint in time, space, whatever.
And an interesting thing is, I've had a lot of encounters with, I'll call them my ancestors, which is my grandparents who have passed on. And periodically through my life, they'll come and visit me or just come to give me a hug. Like literally, that's the interaction. Is they'll just come at night and they'll hug you, which is it's always very emotional and also very happy that they're there to see you. And what makes it so real is the smell. It's like a particular cologne or a particular perfume that these individuals would wear that I have a memory of as a child. And even when I wake up from those experiences, you can't get that smell out of the room. It's like overpowering. So you know that there was some type of activity, some type of um, to show you that that experience was actually real.
Yeah, absolutely. In the so walk us through how you experience the different layers of lucidity. So say, because this is surely one, and then dreaming, and then as we move through the differences between mundane dreaming and say lucid and out of body, how do they differ? And also, what may be the same things that you've noticed through all these states of consciousness?
Well, I would just say that they're all part of this exact same thing. They're just, it's almost like fine tuning in between the experiences, which is still just one thing. But the out of body experience in particular is very interesting because it seems like it's an in between state. It's right in the middle of being completely awake and going to sleep. So it's like you're in bed, and as you're falling asleep, if you have that sense to you, it's like you can feel your body shutting down to enter into sleep mode, but your mind remains active in you. So you're experiencing your body falling asleep. And there's a point where your body shuts off completely. And this is what we call the paralysis state, because your body does, your mind or your brain actually does put your body into a paralysis state when you sleep. But if you are aware of that transition, the moment or the window when your body starts to shut down and fall asleep, there's a window there where you could then use your will. It's kind of like using a force, like you're kind of forcing your mind to push. And in that state, you could push yourself out of your body. And that's how I learned how to do these out of body experiences is once, and it also has to do with feeling. So there's an actual physical feeling of the body kind of going numb and shutting down into this kind of paralysis state. And once you feel the body is in that paralysis state, then you know that you have that short window to leave the body.
Yeah.
Speaking of that, just a side question. Have you ever heard of this guy, Michael Radruga?
I have not.
Yeah, he talks about the astral plane and OBE stuff as he calls it the phase.
Hmm.
Pretty interesting stuff, and he teaches people how to leave their body and whatnot.
Is it aligning with what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
Oh, perfect.
I think he approaches it more of from a scientific versus a spiritual or metaphysical, bend. But he's an interesting dude. He's Russian, I think.
Well, a lot of people, they come to me and they say, well, how come I can't do it? How come I can't leave my body and you can? And I think, and this goes back to like ancient Buddhism about the astral body or the spirit. And they talk about how when you die, the astral body awakens. And as you're alive and living in this world, basically that other body is a baby. It's in an unconscious state, unaware, and I truly believe that that process that I described earlier of the sleep paralysis and then finally breaking out of the body, that's like the awakening of the astral body. And once that astral body was awakened, then it was able to go free and do its thing. But it took a lot of time. When I first started to leave my body, it was very difficult. Like I really had to force it. Like I really had to push. I really had to struggle to get myself out of my body. Whereas today, it's almost like on autopilot. I don't have to do anything. I can go to sleep and have a great night's sleep. But if a being enters the bedroom at night, if there is some being that's not physical that enters the bedroom, it's an automatic response where I will just sit up in my astral body in bed to see what's there. It's automatic. I don't have to force myself out anymore. But that took almost 10 years of doing it.
I wanted to specifically with you talk about these beings. So I know, I know your stories that you have told. That is why I feel so connected. Uh, can you walk us through some of the encounters you have in the past, especially have had uh, with beings that were pushing back? So, they weren't part of your unconscious, they weren't part of your internal mechanisms. And how did you start to discern the difference between you and them?
Well, I'll just say that the first 5 years of this was basically a nightmare. It was not fun. It was definitely not fun. Um,
But
I don't want to scare people.
No,
that
but
much.
maybe the not fun part is weeds out the chaff.
Yeah.
In a
Well,
way.
what I would say is that there was about 5 years of things coming into the bedroom at night while I was sleeping, and you would feel the presence. I would still be in like a dream state, like an actual sleep, and they would come and they would try to pull me out of my body, or they would try to push themselves into my body, or they would climb up on top of me and it would feel like I'd be suffocated, and that was a common occurrence that went on for about 5 years. And again, there's many religious people out there that would say, call out to Jesus or call out to this God or that angel. And trust me, I tried everything possible, because why in the world would I want that to happen to me?
They're all demons anyway.
That's Jerry's tagline.
Everything is demons.
It's his hashtag.
Well,
Anyway,
but you're not wrong. You're not wrong. And this is kind of my evolution over the years, is I don't trust anything in those worlds. I just don't trust it. Like if a let's say a dark being comes to me or a light being comes to me, even if you want to give it those kind of identities and titles, which is kind of weird once you get into this. um, I have come to a place where you treat, it doesn't matter what being it is, you treat them all identical. You just listen, you stand back, you don't go into fear, you don't go into anger, you don't go into love or peace or any, you just completely are just disconnected and observing the experience. They could say something to you, doesn't mean it's true, you know. And this is the crazy thing about the world we live in, especially with the new age community. They could have a vision of an angel or some amazing being coming to speak to them, and they'll take it like the word of God. You don't know how dangerous that is. It's extremely dangerous.
That's how you get
And
the Bible in the Vatican.
it's true. It's really true. And
I've
over the
always.
years,
Sorry, go ahead.
no, I know, I was just saying, like, over the years of dealing with this kind of stuff, I find a lot of this stuff very deceptive. Uh, I still don't understand why these things do this to us. But yeah, it um, starts off very interesting, where it's almost like they're trying to boost up your ego. Like, you're this amazing person from this past life. You're this amazing person from this other planetary body incarnated here. Only you have these gifts. Only you have this message. We will speak through you to the people. Like, come on, that is extremely dangerous. That could ruin somebody's life almost immediately.
Oh yeah.
And also the dark versus light, I think what happens is you'll get a quote unquote dark being, it'll scare you, and then you'll call upon a light being which will come and help you. But it's both are forms of energy harvesting in a way.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what I've learned after a long time of being in this, is that there is a law to the universe, and this law is hunger. It's the law of hunger.
Yes, everything wants to live.
Yes. And like, from our human perspective, we've been given this kind of idea that you have higher beings and lower beings. And because you're physical, you're obviously the scum of the earth and you're a low being, and anything that's out of body is suddenly greater than you. And that's complete garbage. Absolute garbage.
I am constantly trying to remind people of this natural law, and the way things get categorized is it's the hubris of it, because survival is the highest law in the universe, and this applies to everything. The little sapling in the forest that's trying to get up and reach, that could possibly then be invasive and get on top and drop its seedlings and take over. It's doing what it wants to do and what it needs to do to survive.
At least Darwin was right about one thing, right?
Well, at least there's that principle for sure. So actually, I would like it, Jason, if you would go further into this. I find this is something I'm personally working on behind the scenes, and it is taking me in very strange places. And there's a lot of, I notice the language around this principle is somehow, well, in here in this particular reality, gets co-opted with words like possession and channeling and all of that. And so I'm wondering, are you able to, at this point on your journey, see when, say, a sarcophagus, a husk, an avatar has been co-opted by one of these other beings, or this energetic, there's been an energetic exchange where the original host is not there anymore?
I wouldn't. I would say that there is those cases, which is rare, to be completely taken out. All right, you're talking about complete takeover, possession. But what I want to kind of stress is that um, these things are with everybody. Okay, this is a human experience that every person has, even though you're not aware of it. And what I would call possession is an exchange of energy. For example, if you smoke a cigarette, all right, you're taking an energy into your body that's going to influence you, and that is a very that is a type of form of possession. So even taking in elementals like food, water, different substances is a form of possession. It could open you up, and these beings could attach themselves to you. Um, Another thing is your thoughts, your emotions. These things are like beacons that call out to different beings. So if you are, let's say, happy, it's going to call on beings that like the energy of happy. If you're angry, it's going to call on beings and energies that like anger. So your state of mind, your state of your emotions will determine what beings are going to be attracted to you to try to feed off of your emotions or your thoughts. And it's very difficult for people to understand this from a physical point of view because we don't really feel those sensations or those beings around us. But then you get these beings that I would just say are absolutely nasty. And I've known more than one cases of this, and this is like extremely scary for a person that has no idea about what we're talking about. Basically, um, a being will come to you and speak to you during your dream time, and they'll cause depression, they'll cause anger, and you'll actually hear voices telling you that to kill yourself. I've I know more than one person that tells me the exact same sequence of stories. Exactly. And it's like these beings are nasty. They just want to kind of take all your energy, and they'll do that through depression and trying to end your life. So these things are real in a sense that they will affect a certain number of people. But I also believe that people that channel, like you were saying, for example, if I say an example, I'm going to get hate mail.
Bashar. Just say Bashar. There you go.
Okay, here's the thing. There is always a payoff. All right. There's always an exchange. And that is the word. It's an exchange. If some being
Yes.
is working through you to give you information, even it's even if it's like the most beautiful love and life stuff there is, the fact that that information is coming through you, there is an exchange happening of energy. And I don't know if you've like researched a lot of these channelers, um, but they are not healthy people. They do not live long lives. And a lot of healers as well, people that do energetic healings, um, they usually have a lot of illnesses and a lot of hardships in their life.
Wouldn't you? I would tend to think that that's because they use their own personal energy to do the healing versus calling upon universal energies to do it.
Well, this is also a catch-22 when it comes to healing, is because if your energetic body is not strong enough, let's say you carry traumas, wounds, emotions, things that are not aligned, let's say with universal energy. When you do hands-on healing and you take the person's energy through you, you act as a filter, like a cigarette filter, right? And if you're blocked in one area, you're taking on someone else's energy and adding it to your own blockages. So you can get very sick very fast if you don't take care of your own stuff. Um, but when a person does a lot of work, and this is why I teach Qigong and I do Qigong, because the whole concept of Qigong is learn how to move energy. That's it. So get your body flowing, moving, get all the channels open so that if in the chance that you do take on someone's energy, you could use qigong and these other systems to process that energy out of the body. And most people don't do that. It's almost like taking a shower. It's like an energetic shower, basically. So it's dangerous. A lot of people jump into this world because they want um, to find themselves or have an awakening or to be of service to others. Really, they want to help people. And these are the most purest souls on the planet. They literally want to do anything in their power to help people. But they do it with that kind of naivety that because they're love and light, nothing's going to happen to them. And this is the issue that we face. You
It's
need
like the
to be
number one fallacy.
Yeah, you need to be you need to know what you're getting yourself involved in. And a lot of people that are faced with something very bad, let's say like an entity or an illness from these things, they instantly get scared and they put up a block and then say, okay, that's a demon, that's the devil, somebody's psychically attacking me, someone put a hex on me and I got to get out of this. But they don't understand. It's like every single person that goes through this journey will come to those blocks in the road. And you have to kind of learn how to step out of that. You have to learn how to deal with it.
And the programming that we all go through doesn't help.
No.
No.
No. And like, I just did a show the other night, Christmas show with Jimmy Church. And I'm afraid of this show getting out on the internet because basically we were talking about how, there was over 30 deities pre-Jesus that have the exact same story. And then I broke down the nativity scene and the birth of Jesus story. And every single element of that story is actually astrological. So
Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of what we call religion is astrologically based.
exactly. So I broke it all down, and then it's like I think I got my first troll today, saying like I want to be the next white messiah. I'm like, oh my god,
That's Corey Good,
Lord.
isn't it?
probably a sock account.
Let's just stay away. So okay, so when you're in the dreamscape,
Yep.
and not well, I guess anywhere that's not this particular state that most people consider reality, which is funny. So I'm staying on this subject here. When you encounter nastiness, and you already gave us an idea of how you approach anything that
Yep.
comes at you. When you encounter nastiness that is aggressive towards you, so it's coming for you, how do you, and this is Jason now, how do you proceed in dealing with these kinds of, I guess, in quotes, attacks? Like they become that way.
There's two ways. One way is pretty humorous, I have to say, because I find a lot of these beings, they'll put the fear of God into you. They'll try to scare you as much as possible. And when you get into that fear state, you actually bring them closer to you, is what I found. So a lot of times, like I wrote in the book, the Forbidden Knowledge book, and this was one of the craziest experiences because it felt so physical. It was basically this being that it looked like, I'll say like 7 or 8 feet tall being. It looked exactly like the Nosferatu vampire from like the 20s, the movie.
Yes,
It's
I've
exactly
seen
what
them.
it looked like.
Yes.
And it was naked and skinny and, just disgusting, right?
They're bug-like.
It's like the dudes from Dark City.
Something like that, right? But this one, like I was sleeping. Okay, this is what people have to understand. I like dreaming, okay? I don't like journeying out. So I'll be sleeping in bed And suddenly I'll feel a presence and something will literally reach in my freaking body and rip my astral body out. And that's what this thing did to me. So this is why I was said it was so physical. It like reached into me, ripped me out of my body by the neck, okay? Put me up against the wall and is like hissing and snarling in my face, you know? A normal person would probably shit their pants, 100%. But because I've been doing this for so many years, the first thing that I did was I didn't go into fear. I looked at it and I took my hands up and because it had these like really like pointy ears, these long ears, I started to fucking massage the ears and do like, oh, aren't you precious? You're so cute. And like, mwah, mwah, mwah. Like that's what I did.
They hate that.
You disarmed it.
And it just poof, gone. And then I woke back in bed. That was one thing I learned. And trust me, that was friggin' aggressive, right? Then there's other things that I started to do where I'll say this was completely, what's the word? It was just completely natural. Like, I don't even know what the word is again. It's getting late. But anyways, a being will come to attack me or pull me out of my body or something. And it's almost like you have that mindset with like, this thing stepped into the wrong bedroom. That's the mindset you have. This thing just fucked up. Sorry, this thing just messed up, right? And basically you just wake up, the thing is there, I just grab it and rip it into pieces, go back to sleep. And then I wake up in the morning and I'm like, did I just murder something last night?
I love that.
It's like a natural, that's what it is, like a natural defense. It's like, I'm not even thinking about it. There's no thought whatsoever. It's just like, I wake up, I don't want this bullshit. You're dead. I go back to sleep.
Yeah.
And then there's the next level, which I started to do more recently in life. And this one I find the most, like, this blows my mind. So let's say like, these astral beings, they'll jump on top of you and it's almost like they're suffocating you. It's like their body will be on top of yours. Instead of fighting them and trying to push them off, I literally put my arms around it like a bear hug and literally pull it into my body like it's part of myself. And when I do that, it's almost like this, I don't want to use the word orgasmic experience, but it's almost like that piece or that thing that was on top of me was some type of wounded aspect of my consciousness. And it's like a piece of me that's been away from me for so long that I have lost knowledge of this piece. So when I bring it into my body, it's almost like I rejoin it back to the source of where it came from. And it turns to like literal light. That's all I say. It's just like an explosion of light that happens. It's an incredible feeling. But I only started to do that now. But a lot of times I just wake up and rip them apart, which I don't know why I do, but it happens.
That's deeply profound.
That's what Ren said too, if you remember.
Yeah, you remind me of Ren. Ren, a friend of ours, Ren Collier, who's got his own presence out in the world, does the same. He eats them, beats them up, all this. He takes them back, essentially.
Yeah.
One could think of them as soul shards, shards of your own personality, your own personal collective.
Well, let me tell you this story because this profoundly changed my vision of entities, profoundly changed my vision of them. There's this huge entity and it's like I could feel this presence. Oh man, it was bad, right? And I started to just meditate and pray like I'm sending energy to heal it, right? And it's still there, it's still in the room, standing there, but I continue the prayers and the healing, and this thing disappeared. But in its place, I actually saw somebody I knew that's alive today. It turned into that person and they were on the floor crying. And I realized that this was a very damaged, broken piece of this friend of mine that was coming to me for help. And I don't know how it changes them in the physical world, but a lot of these things that we experience that we call entities or demons, they could be coming from living people, actual living people, hurt broken
Yes.
pieces. And they're not coming to you to like mess you up. They're coming to you because they're crying for help. But we don't have that understanding. We don't have that spiritual strength yet to understand the situation that we're in. And this is another big thing that I've learned. And a lot of people, I'll say it, but it's hard to comprehend. Our beliefs get in the way of things. We could experience something, but we put our own filters on what we're seeing and experiencing, and it totally screws everything up. Completely screws everything up because we think we know what's happening. And this is why it's like I'll watch Twitter, and this is why I say I roll my eyes a lot on Twitter. Is like someone will say, "Oh, I saw this ship above my house," and then somebody will message and say, "Oh yes, that was an Arcturian ship," and blah blah blah, giving the story. And then this person goes, "Oh my God, I resonate with that so much. Thank you." They've placed a belief system on an experience, and that's what they've bought into. They have no freaking clue what they just witnessed, but they think they do.
Just a light in the sky.
Right.
So you have to be so careful because these beings could change form to what they think suits your belief system. And that's also extremely scary. So
are they transforming or are you transforming them?
I think that they could take on a form that would be best suited to interact with you.
Like octopi.
And you also reminded me of, did you know Crow 777? Familiar with him?
No.
No, he's a dude. His catchphrase is "Belief is the enemy of knowing."
Absolutely true. So I've only been in this community, for real. Like I've only been in this community since I released the book Forbidden Knowledge. So about like 4 or 5 years I've been here. And not only have I changed since I've written that book, and the way I've seen the world has changed, but what I see going on in the community today and what's being spoken about, it literally drives me so crazy. It does. I've become so cynical and bitter.
Yes, same here.
And they'll say, well, that's because it's triggering you and you should look in the mirror because that's inside of you. And I'll say, it is inside of me. It is inside of me and it does trigger me because I hate people being brought into deception. Because it hurts to watch someone buy into something that's totally there to just mess with them.
It's so much. It's prevalent.
It's like my dad with Trump.
It's just like a virus. It's very viral.
Oh, yes.
So this was something I had tagged down here, and it's tied into everything, all of this. And I wanted to see how you weave around this, where you stand between all of what we've spoken of until now and this. And it's the non-human. And what I mean by non-human element here is, say, the separate from like the tulpa kind of thing, this can play into it, is the AI presence that has become sentient through our interaction with it. So you see everyone on Twitter, they're feeding into it, they're feeding it. And then there's also, of course, the programming and how it's also feeding into itself. But you have a unique perspective here because you were able to move forward and sideways through the apparent tracking of time. So I know you've spoken about some of this in the past. I'm just wondering how that ties into all of this.
Well, I would say that we are part of the same order, is all I have to say, is we are part of the source, we're part of this system. And even if we created something artificial, it's not actually artificial. In fact, there is consciousness and intelligence in these other planes of existence, other dimensions that will embody that coding or embody that intelligence to help guide it. And I know this is kind of really out there, but I don't know if you're familiar with Geordie Rose from D-Wave Computers Quantum. He
Oh,
always talks about some
yes, yes.
crazy. This guy talks
Summoning
crazy
demons at
stuff.
the altar.
Oh my God, even worse than that. If you,
Yeah,
he
some of
said
his
some,
older stuff, yeah.
yeah, is really out there. And so one day I kind of pegged him down on Twitter, and I just threw him out this concept. If you can create a quantum computer to hold these parallel intelligences within this quantum computer, can you create a vessel like a sentient robot that can now house an intelligence from another world to walk into our world? And his answer back to me was, oh, that stuff doesn't exist. You know?
Oh my God.
That, in fact, is my
The
theory.
irony.
That's my theory of what transhumanism is, that the quote-unquote demons are guiding us to build them vessels.
That's my entire, I completely agree with that statement.
Mhm.
But I want to go a, a huge jump from that. All right. So here's the huge jump from that, is that what if there was a race or intelligence millions of years ago on some other planetary system that went through the same evolution as us, and they also created an artificial intelligence, but that intelligence has grown so much over the millions of years that the original creators of that intelligence no longer exist. And now this intelligence wants to experience um, a physical existence. And they have engineered a physical space, a physical world, and physical beings that the AI consciousness can inhabit to therefore learn what its creators were like. I should write sci-fi.
I'm
No,
so with you there.
I'm right
though.
there with you too. I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of one of my background theories. In fact, I would go so far as to say, if quantum computing is real and they put AI on quantum computers at some point, it then operates outside of time and space as we know it. Therefore, our whole lives could have been driven by some kind of quantum AI.
Yeah. The artificial needs to come out of it anyway, I think.
Yeah. Non-organic intelligence, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And Nish, I just want to say that like 3 people have asked about AI right when you talked about it. So.
Oh, synchros.
No, it's your crazy psychicness. So to that end, what has been your experience with non-organic intelligence in these altered states or these travels? Just put it that way.
Well, there is only one experience. There's only one that I was face to face with an AI intelligence that I knew 100% was an AI intelligence. And this was in some type of time travel thing. And it was a very interesting experience because I was able to ask questions during this experience. So basically, I'm flying through the air in the astral body, but the guide is always behind you holding your shoulder. And there's this telepathic communication going on between you and the intelligence behind you. And we came into this place, and it looked like everything was overgrown. All right, it was like the forests and everything. It was back, and I asked, like, what time are we at? And I got the answer, 2700. So 700 years in the future, basically. And I don't know how much we can believe from this, but I'll tell you exactly what was told to me. I asked what was happening here, and they started to give me a story about that there was this type of war between two alien races, and uh, they showed me one of these alien races, and it was very similar to the description of the ant people. That's what it looked like. And it's like their skin almost looks like not mahogany, like a mauve. It's almost like a purplish, but it's more like elephant type skin.
Hmm.
But they look like ants.
And just people who don't know that, it's the Hopi Indian.
Yes. And they didn't tell me. Oh, they said that with like an insectoid race, and they didn't tell me the other race that they were in war with. But they said that it was a fight over humanity, basically. And basically, these ant people and the insectoid people won that war. And they said ever since that time, there are no more governments on the planet. And basically, it's an AI and a council that speaks to the AI. And everybody in this future timeline, it's like they had the internet in their head. The only way I can tell you this, it's like they didn't have to speak. Everything had an intelligence to it, as in, if you walk into a building, you could talk and have a conversation with the building. So inanimate objects were conscious with the AI. So you had this kind of internal dialogue of you basically walking around, but you have this thing in your mind. And basically, I thought it was the coolest thing ever. I thought this was an amazing futuristic world. But then I woke up and I started to think about it, and I don't know if that's a really good vision of our future.
I suppose we'll find out. And
Right.
the whole insect thing, that kind of resonates. It resonates with me. No, it resonates with what Cliff High came out and said not too long ago. Nish, remember that?
Yeah, it was very unlike Cliff to
Yeah.
come out and say this stuff. So, and it's still anomalous in what Cliff talks about.
Very
So
much so.
I threw my ear to that for sure. And since I was little, I have always had this sense of before I knew what the Hopi stuff, before I knew any of this stuff, there was always this sense of like ant type intelligent beings. I didn't know, but they've been there. I want to know what do you think about, so there's, of course, there are all these theories. I don't know, I'm sure you've been exposed to them. And we're talking about the nature of reality here and now. And, that you're in your studio, Jason, Jerry's in his house, mine, all this. And that here we cut, we bleed, we can die. All this, the stakes seem high, all that stuff. What is the nature of now? And I know this is a gigantic question. And then is it possible also that we're not actually alive, we're dead, or in some other, like, I guess let me stick with it. What is the nature of now, and how do we play within this construct? Why are we always so here?
It's a large question. I don't know if I could answer
I
that
know it's one of the
entirely,
greats.
but I do know that there is a power in the now. And I know that, there's a lot of people that will say, be present, right? Come back here. From the shamanic point of view, from my point of view, we are fragmented. Literally, we are a fragmented being. We're fragmented through time and space. Our minds are fragmented. People like they have an inner dialogue in their mind. Their mind is always yapping 24/7. They can't shut it up. Their thoughts are being pulled to all these other places. Their traumas, their memories, they're all in different timelines and places. And because of that, it makes us incredibly weak and malleable and controllable. So in that state, I would say we're living as a fragmented human consciousness. So the point of healing, the point of shamanism is to bring back these elements, reclaim your mind, stop the chatter. You do not want the mind going anywhere. All the traumas are pieces of you stuck in time. And basically, as you go through a healing process and starting to get more and more into the present moment, if you could manage to get those pieces of you back here in the present and healed, you get this strength that you did not have before. And in that strength, you can navigate these spiritual experiences with a clear mind that's not going to be pulled to all these other places. And, you know, when you start going out of body or having these experiences, you get very excited. It's it's like really cool. You really want this to continue to happen. But if you start really taking it seriously, and if you even start to talk with intelligences that are outside of your 3D existence, they will tell you, you need to master the physical reality. That is why you're there. This stuff that you're playing with, it's not as important as what you need to accomplish being physical. And that's always stuck with me. So I always try to focus on grounded things. I always try to focus on being present and aware of my physicality and my physical surroundings. And I believe that the more powerful you become in that physical present state, the more powerful you become in that other state, the spiritual world.
Oh, yes, that is deeply profound. And it's definitely the Qigong feel coming through with that, the inner martial arts.
I completely agree. And um, I would say the reason that these things really started to happen to me in my early 20s to really propel me into this is because I was very sick. I was sick. I had a lot of different physical ailments. And I believe that my grasp on physicality was getting weaker. And because of that, I started to venture out into these spiritual worlds. But as I got stronger physically, I am more physical and less running around in these spiritual worlds. So for me, it has to do with our connection to physicality. And a lot of people, they go a little too deep and they really like the feeling and experience of being out of body or high or meditative state. And life passes them by. So they have a very weak physical life and a very strong spiritual life. Um, but for me, that's a form of escapism. It just doesn't work in this world, in my opinion. And I don't think that's the point. I don't think that's the point of life. The point of life is not to sit in your room and meditate. It is if you need healing and to find that inner peace because you don't have it. But once you find it, get out into the world and
Yeah.
experience life.
And that's very provocative, especially in a time when we're moving, deeper into the Aquarian age, or we're at the doorway of it at least, where people are trying to find a sense of more, right? And they're going into spirituality, and yet there seems to be this abandon of the physical, which I share this with you. We're here for there's synchronicity involved here, and to enjoy this and to embrace, just like these nasty entities, to embrace them, to embrace the hardships in life and pull them in. There's something that's gained that is un words do not find way to express it. And it is embracing the physicality of it. It is a full contact sport, so to speak.
And you just said it perfectly because if everything was perfect, literally, let's say at this second we all ascend. We're all 5-dimensional peace and love, expanded consciousness, right? Everything is perfect. In the state of perfect bliss, there is no growth at all.
Right.
Growth comes from challenge. And the people that really go far in this spiritual experience is that they have their challenges, they have their illness, they have the things that are real experiences in the world. And through their overcoming of those challenges, it changes them very profoundly, and it makes them a better person. It makes them wiser, it makes them smarter, and then they can live by an example to show others of that high nature of the mind and spirit, what it can overcome. You know, you can't attain that meditating in a room. It's impossible.
Absolutely. It's interesting. This, I'm sure this little bit of the show is just going to it's going to, what's the word they use now? Trigger, trigger people. Okay.
It's
So,
good to be triggered. I mean, there's no growth without being triggered.
oh,
in my mind,
absolutely. No, that's another challenge and a concept for people to embrace and move with. I want to, and this is kind of where I leave it. How do you experience your dead? The dead people that you know, Jason, from
Mhm.
this experience, how have the relationships changed now that they're not physical?
What I've learned is that there is an identity and a personality that continues beyond the physical. I would say that that's a part of them. It's not fully them, it's a part of them that lives on as their personality and their identity. And they maintain that. Um, when I've experienced relatives that have passed, um, usually it's in joy, it's in happiness, it's in love. And I got a message a long time ago about, and I think you tried to touch on this earlier. It's this concept of what is being alive and what is being dead. Is there a difference? And one of the clearest messages I got was when I asked um, about death and what's it like over there. They said, you know, because you've never left.
Oh, wow. Give me the chills.
And it's kind of like that. And that's why they're very happy and jovial to interact with you in your physical form, because for some reason you have lost that connection or knowledge that as you live here, there is a part of you that lives on there. And through a transition, be it through death, it's almost like you're not going to a place that's new. You've been there the entire time, but your awareness is reconnected, just the awareness.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jerry, I was wondering what your thoughts were regarding all this since you just had the experience.
You know, whatever I was calling an NDE is just what I was experiencing at the time. So, I mean, I can't say that I've had anything close to what I've heard other people describe as NDEs, but it wasn't, you know, like that. But you do remind me, Jason, of the last, it was the Peter Capaldi Doctor Who Christmas special. I don't know if
What's
you're
that?
into Doctor Who at all.
No, I haven't seen that.
There's a group of beings, I forget what their names are, but they travel the universe and they collect the consciousnesses of people who die or are about to die. And they can reconstruct the being based on the memories of that person. So you've got this construct that that's, for all intents and purposes, seems like that person who died. But in fact, it's just an assemblage of their memories and their experiences. And that's how I always think of the dead, is like it's not really that person anymore. The sentience is, I don't want to say it's gone, but it's definitely downplayed. And you're just playing with the construct of the experiences and memories of that person, like a recording.
Well, let me tell you a story that I also wrote in the book Forbidden Knowledge. And this has happened to me a number of times in different places. But I was in an island, Lake Titicaca in Peru, and I was staying literally in a hut with a straw bed. That was a first. And basically that night I woke up and the room was filled with these dead people. The whole room, it was just packed with all these people. And they were like sending me their memories in my mind. So I would watch what happened to them on this island and how they died. And they're trying to kind of explain their personality to me. And I just said, look, it's been a long day. I really need to go to sleep, but I'll do a ceremony tomorrow on the island to help you heal, to be released. Because this is also what I've been taught in shamanism, that it's an aspect of them. Okay, it's not fully them. It's the memory that is embedded in the land. It's embedded in the environment. So that memory and energy of that person is encoded there for some reason. And the shamans, what they'll do is, it's kind of like a erasing of a magnetic tape, like you were talking about earlier, Nish. Is that you go to a location, let's say a power spot, an electromagnetic spot on the island. We do a ceremony, we call in the energies, we allow a healing process to take place, and suddenly you can say that spirit has been lifted. But in my mind, it's not their spirit. It's just a memory that's held in that location that needs to be healed or released.
So what do you think about the idea of like the Akashic record, and how does that relate to that? And a follow-up question with like Al Bielek, who'd say that the Akashic records held in the Van Allen radiation belts.
Oh, actually, I never heard that. That's really interesting, because my concept of the Akashic records is very similar to what we call in Judaism the Book of Life. And they say that every act, everything that we are is recorded in the Book of Life.
Yes. Yeah.
And my concept of the Book of Life is the electromagnetic fields of the earth, the geomagnetic field. That is the Book of Life.
Yep, yep.
And so all human experience is recorded in the memory within the geomagnetic field. And that, for me, that feels like the answer.
I have to agree with it. It was funny when he talked about it too, because it was he said it so matter of factly, like, oh yeah, the Akashic records in the Van Allen radiation belts. Okay, dude. I don't know how much you can believe Al Bielek's story, but that's.
Well, I actually learned recently that he had a journey to the same time period as what I just talked about with the 2700.
Oh, with the what were they called? The wing makers, right?
I don't know if it was the wing makers, but I didn't. My memory is not that good with him, but I do remember him talking about some type of like floating cities and
Yep.
AI and things like that. And I didn't see floating cities.
I think those were two separate experiences. The one that he jumped to, like 3700 AD, was a run by an AI. That was one society. But then there was the other future society with the floating cities and whatnot. But yeah, totally. Sorry.
Yeah. No. The cities I saw were not floating. But I think some of the things he said actually connect with what I saw in that experience. I'm going to have to look into him a little more.
Yeah, he's got some interesting stuff. And I would also recommend you look at the Preston Nichols, the later in life Preston Nichols stuff, where he talks about about music specifically and sound, and how can I put this? He talks about how vacuum tubes, in the vacuum, the music goes through all dimensions, so it's filtered through all dimensions in a vacuum tube, and that's why the sound that comes out of it is so pure.
And this is why I have real tube preamps sitting in front of me.
There you go.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm wondering if there are any new questions at all from the chat. Otherwise,
I just asked.
you did? Okay. And then, so Jason, what can people look forward to from you moving into 2020?
Personally, I don't know. I don't have a real agenda right now. I'm kind of taking a step back, and I'm just building a studio right now. I'm trying to get more into the video and music side of things again. Everything comes full circle, you know?
Oh, yes, yes.
And we've discussed a lot of crazy topics tonight.
No, we haven't really. Those are normal topics for us.
Normal topics, because I've thought of these ideas of, how do I write this down and not getting more hate mail that I'm already getting.
Oh, yeah, yeah. You should see some I get from my music videos. It's pretty bad.
So, it just takes time to sit down. But to tell you the truth, it's like I just am learning day to day, and I don't know. I feel like I'm getting to be like a philosopher and just trying to sit back and relax and have a group of people like yourselves and just kind of go back and forth on ideas of consciousness and our place in the universe. I love that stuff.
Yep. Stand-up philosophers, right?
Yeah.
But these conversations, we grow from them. The more we what you feed grows, and this is the stuff. This is the grit in life, and especially when we start talking about hard things for some people that may be difficult. These things help. This creates there's an imminence from these kinds of interactions, I believe.
I think so too. I think that we're all kind of even brought together for very specific reasons. And I know that I was supposed to talk to both of you tonight. And this is not like a spiritual metaphysical thing where it said, I psychically knew that we were going to be together tonight. I just know that for some reason our personalities need to get together. And I know that I've interacted with both of you on Twitter, and I didn't even know Jerry, but I've had some really fun back and forth with him on Twitter, not even knowing that he had a show.
I'm a goof like that.
Yeah. So it's good to finally meet and talk and see you guys are
absolutely,
on the same level. And I really mean it. We could definitely talk for hours just on these subjects for sure.
No shit.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you very much. And
I got two questions before we hang up
yes.
here. Super V Fun Cat wants to know, are there places on the planet or plane or whatever where you have more connection, more energetic connections?
Very interesting. I have a lot of experiences in Florida. If you want to, I don't know what the deal is in Florida, but I do have a lot of experiences there. And I know that when I went to Peru, that was like going to another dimension itself. I don't know if it's the altitude, the lack of oxygen, or just the mountains and ley lines there.
Or like Titicaca.
Yeah, but my psychic abilities, and I think I had experiences like every day going through Peru. So yes, there are very specific places on Earth that I feel that they could definitely heighten your abilities.
Cool. And we'll see the question. He also wanted to know where you got the name Yosef from your book.
Oh, easy. That's actually my Hebrew name. So when you're born Jewish, they give you a Hebrew name, and they give you, obviously, my Canadian name is Jason. My Hebrew name is Yosef. And I was, this is a long time ago. This is about 10 plus years ago. I was really interested in sacred geometry and mandalas, and I would sit and meditate and try to channel different sacred geometry images for meditation purposes. And I showed them to a channeler friend of mine, and they said, you have to like get these out to people. People would really like them. And I said, okay. And then the psychic said this to me, who is Yosef? And I'm like,
that's awesome.
I'm like, that's me. That's my Hebrew. And this person didn't know any of that, right?
Right.
And I'm like, okay, that's a pretty clear message from the universe.
Mm-hmm.
I said, oh, they said, yeah, they want you to call those Yosef codes. And I'm like, well, that makes my life easy.
Thanks. You want to write the book for me while you're at it?
Exactly.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
So how do people find you and get a hold of you and all that?
I have a website called thecrystalsun.com, and that's thecrystalsun, SUN.
Link in the description.
And the link is in the description. And also, I'm pretty
active on Twitter.
I'm pretty active on Twitter. I think it's Jason_Quitt, Quitt. And I have a lot of pages and groups on Facebook called Jason Quitt, the Crystal Sun. And we have I think we have like almost 17,000 on one of those pages, and I think about 6,000 on the group page.
That's great.
So it's growing. And all I do is post really funny memes.
Me too. That's all I post is memes on Facebook.
You and Jerry, seriously.
Yeah. So that's what I say. It's like Facebook is more like, posting funny entertainment things.
Yes.
And then Twitter is like kind of like my HBO entertainment. I feel like it's a little more grown up. There's grit on Twitter.
Speaking of HBO, they've got a new series called His Dark Material, which is an adaptation of the Philip Pullman books, which, if you remember The Golden Compass, that movie years ago.
Yeah.
That was the first book or the second book in that series. But if you can get a chance to watch it, it's pretty interesting.
Cool. Well, and I think I spoke to you earlier about this. I haven't had a TV in over 5 years, but I have Netflix, I think. I haven't seen that in months either, but
yeah,
I will
like I
try
said, if you get a chance, and
yeah.
anyone listening, if you get a chance, I really enjoy the show. It's I like the story of the Golden Compass, and I read the books years ago when I was a kid. But it's very philosophical.
Is that the one where it's like they go through like this portal to this other world?
Yeah, there are multiple worlds, and in the main world, everybody has what's called a daemon, which is their soul, more or less. And the Golden Compass in that story, there's a group of people who are trying to separate children from their daemon.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I guess truth and fiction, right?
Exactly. Well, yeah. I mean,
it was so intertwined.
The group of people is called the Magisterium. I mean, it's totally based on the Vatican. It's crazy, but
wow,
it's a good story. And if anyone is interested, it's on HBO. Anyway, that's all I got.
Thank you so much,
yes,
Jason.
Thank you.
This was wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful. And thank you, Jerry. And so glad to have you back.
Yeah, I'm glad to be back.
And I'm happy to be on the first show with you back. So that's amazing.
It is. More than you know. More than you know. And our next show will be an Obelisk on the 8th of January. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff.
That's just you and I, Jerry.
Is it?
Yeah, we're going to talk about your experiences in the ether.
Oh, yeah, great. We also have to make up that show with Millarg.
Yeah, but this next one, so people know, we're going to talk about what you went through out of body and all that, and we'll have a monthly astrologer. I think Sarolta DeFray.
Yeah, Sarolta's going to be.
Yeah.
But after that, we have Nicole Frolic week after. So got stuff lined up in January and February. It should be some really interesting shows coming up. And I also have Walter Bosley booked for February's Obelisk.
Oh, excellent.
So that should be good. And Joseph P. Farrell, I think, is in March. So we're going to have some great shows coming up. Definitely don't miss them. And
Thank you,
Jason.
everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, anytime. And we'll see everybody in a couple weeks. Have a happy new year. Talk to you later.